Good morning and welcome to Formula for Wealth. And my client today is Adrian Gallagher. Adrian is based in Ireland and he is a qualified financial advisor. So, Adrian, welcome to Formula for Wealth today.
Thank you for having me here today.
Now, Adrian's expertise is working with small businesses and helping them to grow bigger. So, would you like to tell us a little bit about what you do with the companies, Adrian?
Yes, this comes from my own background of working for 40 years in the business world. What I like to do is find small companies that where the entrepreneur or the owner of it is very specialized in a skill set, but needs help in all the other areas of running the business. And I start at the basics of making sure they have a business plan that we've agreed what way the business is going to grow, where it's going to be in 1 year, 3 years, and 5 years out from here. We then take that and put that into a budget and make sure that that the plan makes sense financially and that the company will grow both its profits and more importantly its cash flow and be cash generative. And then what I do is work the plan with them every week. I meet them by Zoom. They have to all send their figures in by Monday lunchtime to my office. We review the figures, and if there's a deviation against the budget, either good or bad, I want to know what's going on and see can I help them. So basically, I'm kind of providing nearly a managing director like type service to somebody. I'm available 24/7 if they got a problem with the business, if something goes wrong, a van crashes or somebody happens, or their best customer throws a wobble or whatever it is. I'm there to support them and help them. And in certain cases, I'll go with them to a client if I have to as well. So then I will work with them and help them grow and develop their own management skill sets and support them in their vision to grow their businesses. Then hopefully what I want to do with them, when I get them making some money, I then try to help them to manage it so carefully. And by that I mean starting up pensions, moving the profitability from the company to their own personal wealth, and making sure that they're properly insured. I went through the first 30 years of my own life with young kids, and I look back and say I had zero insurance, and that is silly. So, helping people avoid some of the mistakes I've made. And I suppose for the fun for me of it is that I can get a chance to use my experience and hard-won wisdom, shall we say, and now help somebody else not make those mistakes and get rewarded for doing it. So that's really where I'm at.
You work with all different types of business. Give us an example of some of the industries that you work in.
I have a range of clients today, from dog groomers to electrical contractors to a chain of butcher shops, to a sauce maker who provides specialized sauces to the butchery trade. I have an IT company. I have a HR company that recruits. It's not a thing I like too much myself, but since they recruit temporary staff for big companies who take on lots of people. So there's a kind of a flavor of the range of companies. But for me, it's almost the same thing, because what you're doing is you're taking a product or a service, you're selling that to somebody, you're making a profit on it. If you give a good service and a proper service, you'll grow your business and you'll get referred. You run your books and accounts so that you know exactly what you're making, that nobody's kidding themselves thinking they're doing great when they're not, or vice versa, actually doing a lot better than they realize. And that you're running legitimately and correctly and paying your taxes and doing your company returns on time and all those things, so that we all can sleep in our beds at night and not be looking over our shoulders. So fundamentally, for our businesses, it's brutally simple in some ways. If you break the rules, you'll pay the price, and you'll go out of business. If you obey the fundamentals, you should prosper and grow. And if something is not working, you just look down and say, well, why? And as long as you do it in time, when you have the cash resources to change tack, you can change and move. Yeah.
So type of companies that you work with, one-man bands or up to so many employees?
I have no limit on the size of the company. I prefer to work with companies that obviously would have maybe more than 25 employees, because I can get a bigger effect for what I can do, because you're working with more people at one time. But equally, I work with somebody on their own because I reckon they'll grow. I'm more important. I interview my clients and I look at them as if I was going to take on them as an employee to my own business.
Yeah.
And if I like what I see, that the person has the, the gumption and the enthusiasm to work and grow, and the ability to learn and to be able to interact with me. And I'm happy. I mean, I'm not an oracle either, and I'll make mistakes. So it's a part of that's where we go and do the business planning process. We just to and fro all the time to see what way. And I keep saying it's your business, it's your decision. But if this go to something I think is really daft, I'll explain why I think it's daft and why I think we might look at it a different way or what I've seen before. And on that basis, then hopefully we come to a plan that's a meeting of all the minds, and then everybody believes in it, and we go work at them. Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier about insurance, which to me is part of risk management.
Correct.
How do you encourage better risk management policies within the companies you work with?
Normally, I tell them stories about some of the horror things I've seen happen. And one would be recently where a lady that I know well, but I didn't write the initial policies for her, rang me one Monday morning on my way to work. And I asked her how she was, and she burst into tears, and she told me that her husband had dropped dead the day before, and she'd found him in the bed at the age of 46.
Mm.
He was the main breadwinner in the house. She had a small business of her own. And she said, I don't know what I'm going to do. But I said, you have policies, because she had asked me a number of months ago to look at something for her. And I'd looked and I'd advised her not to shift the policies she had because they were pretty good. But it turned out that his life was insured for €500,000. And on top of that, their mortgage protection on their house, and the house, they still owed about 180,000 on the house. I was able to tell her that morning, because I'd looked at policies, look, this is a terrible situation, but you don't need to worry about money. You're going to the roof over your head is safe, and you'll have €500,000 coming to you. Now it's going to take a while to organise it, but do you want to? And I helped her, even though it wasn't my policy case. I went to the bank and arranged to stop the payments on her mortgage, because could tell them that there was mortgage protection, and they were very good about it. They agreed just to hold everything. So I had to ring her back a few days later and say, look, I've stopped your mortgage. You don't have to worry about paying it now. That's stopped for the moment now, and I need. But till we get death certificate, we can't get the rest of the money. But the bank will give you a small loan as well if you need it, and so on. Right now, there's a case where that woman was looking at being on top of losing her husband and being totally distraught, and a one small child, where she wasn't sure whether she had enough money to live on the next month or not. To the fact that she was actually quite comfortable, right? Now, that's the value of insurance, and they were paying about €80 a month, and then so that is the easiest way of explaining it. And what I do with clients too is when they have very little money, I start them off with simple life insurance policies, which are cheap, just to give them some cover that if they do. And as the business gets more profitable, I then take out more complicated types of insurance, which you can do where the business actually will pay for it.
Yeah, because I think not just the insurance side, but risk management in general is something that is overlooked with an enormous number of businesses. Even some of the big businesses that you see just totally overlook risk management.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, and you see it on the TV, the joke is people insure their houses, they'll insure their cars, but they won't insure their own lives. And what's more valuable at the end of the day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we were chatting before we went live, and you were telling me how you got into business. You've been telling me a couple of little stories here. So the one about the company in the UK that you bought out.
Oh yeah, yeah. I suppose I started off business. As I said the old-fashioned way. I went in as a trainee manager in the '70s in Ireland, and Ireland was quite poor at the time, but has improved a lot by being in the EU. Yeah, but one of the things we did in my early 30s, we bought what was then the biggest oil recycler in the UK, and went to take it over. And this was a small company from Ireland coming at the time. We probably had 100 employees in Ireland. We took over now a company of 350, and I think I went to do the tour of the companies with a big recycling plant in Glasgow. And the night I showed up, the difference was that the previous people who owned the business having a big PLC, and the director used to show up in his Rolls Royce once a month to look at things. I arrived in off a plane. There was a big kerfuffle going on because the night driver hadn't shown up to do the delivery to some customer very important. And I promptly said, well, find me a boiler to somebody and I'll do the delivery, but I don't know where I'm going. So the sales manager had to drive his car in front of me and tell me where to go. It wasn't that far away. So I promptly went, did the delivery, thought nothing of it on the basis that you just got the job done. That was the purpose, and keep the customer
Yeah.
happy. I didn't realize that this went around the rest of the entire company like wildfire, that these people that come from Ireland, the guy actually drove a truck. Uh, and the contrasting between the previous owners and ourselves was a shock to the whole company system. But it worked well because everyone went after that. Every depot, they all said, "Are you the guy who can drive the truck?" That was
That was a different era because I remember I used to go up to London and it used to be how many Rolls Royces can you count? Once you get to Reading and you're driving from Reading to London, how many Rolls Royces can you count? And you knew then you were getting towards the business work because they did, all the bosses were in Rolls Royces.
yeah.
Now, bosses seem to be a lot more user friendly, I suppose, and more accessible is probably the way to describe it.
Well, it was a different style of management, wasn't it? That they arrived and people were in awe of them and just simply did what they were told, and whether it be sensible or not. But
We were talking about the way management has, well, it's not really changed, it's just been given different names. Now, you went into management from, do you say it was the early 20s you went into management?
18, I started.
18.
By the time I was 21, so I was running a depot we had in Belfast. I was actually given, I would say, but looking back in some ways, we had talked about our own different careers. In some ways, I probably was given responsibility too early. In some ways, because I said literally by the time I was 21, I was running a small oil depot in Northern Ireland with about in the middle of troubles with about 5 or 6 employees. But like I would have been as a 21 at the time, and thought nothing of it. I remember going one day to take a company over to look. We went look to buy somebody, and when I arrived, I couldn't understand why the guy was so frosty. And when I left, the guy rang my boss. The deal nearly fell through because he said you sent the boy to talk to me. But to us at the time, it was normal because I was out doing deals and doing things, and
Yeah.
it wasn't. But
Uh,
anyway,
yeah, different world then, wouldn't it?
different world.
Now the managers get younger and younger, which is good because management is a skill and you need specific skills to be able to manage a business, which is totally different to actually working in a business. And the fact that you started younger, you said it may have been bad for you to have been given that much responsibility at a young age. But I think people who are trained as managers right from the start look at business from a totally different perspective.
Yeah, probably. And I suppose one of the things for me and maybe for you as well, it has turned me into a very good generalist. I mean, basically, I spent time in my life being a salesman. I spent time doing accounts in the accounts office. I spent time running quite very complex oil refinery plants with
Yeah.
lots of high tech equipment in them, and running laboratories to go with the businesses, and managing shipping terminals, importing oil. Uh, I've been in the media business. I've been in the print business, printing magazines, publishing magazines. I've been in the business of medical gas pipeline business, where oxygen systems in hospitals. And but fundamentally, I'm a great believer that if I go into something and I ask whoever the expert there is to explain how the thing works, if they can explain to me what it is and I'll get it, then I reckon they know their job. If I start to get a load of technical waffle and I don't understand, I actually don't trust that person anymore, because I don't think they actually fundamentally understand what they're
Mm.
actually doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, if that makes sense to you, because and because most things there's either the laws of science or physics or financial laws or everything around things moving. I think, and once you understand, you should be able to understand how it's actually working, right? Yeah, yeah, and then you can take. You're right. Then you can take the business, and then I look and try to make it more efficient. So, in one of the companies I went into recently, I couldn't figure out why the guy was cutting pipe with a handsaw, and I said to the guy who owned the business, "Why is he cutting pipe with a handsaw?" And he said, "Oh, I make them provide their own tools." And I'm going, "But you're paying the guy 28 euros an hour to work for you, and you're making him cut it with a handsaw, and he's a half an hour doing something that he should be doing in about 2 seconds, right?" And eventually he saw the sense that if we gave each of the guys about 2.5 grand's worth of tools, we could get everybody's speed up, right? Now we made
Mm.
them account for the tools and all that, but the productivity in that business went up by 30%.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Something as simple. Yeah.
it's to
And
me it's simple. Yeah.
one of the things is that I see a lot of people who work what I describe as working in the business rather than on the business. And I think that you've got to look at it more from an outside perspective to see how it's actually running, how your systems go, how your customers react to the business, all that. And you've got to step aside to actually look at that and get the overall picture.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, again, for a lot of business owners, to be fair to them, they've come up the hard way. They're always struggling a bit. They're trying to manage a lot of things. They're doing things today that because it just evolved that way, but they were taught themselves, and that nobody's ever come in and asked the question why. Why are you doing this? What's this for? And I'm going to see a client on Thursday this week into a visitor factory, and I've just said to the guy we're going with, if you get me into the factory and give me an hour, let me walk around, I'll come out and I'll tell you whether this business is run well or badly. And I know myself. I just know by walking around, seeing what
Yeah.
the way the layout is, talking to the people, how clean the place is, what kind of the attitude of the staff. Are people happy or grumpy, or what's going on, right? And it's good systems. You'll see if their systems function or not, or if the thing has a logic to it. And in an awful lot of cases they don't. I've seen factories where we just had to reorganize the entire production system. Now, there's all sort of names for it, like lean business and all sort of management stuff, which I look up when I need. But fundamentally, you should be able to tell by walking around you.
Yeah. Um, One of the things that I found is that growing the business, to me, I always felt I was doing a good job in a business when I made myself technically redundant. Right. So that involved bringing somebody else in, doing the training, getting them to the level which they can then run the business. So you're upgrading, upscaling your business. How do you find, what skills do you use with people to get them to the level of being able to upscale their business?
You're absolutely right, and I think the first thing is they have to get the vision themselves that they want to grow, that they really got to understand that they really want this business to grow. That's the first, and the second thing is, and that it's going to involve them changing their attitude to what it is, because in a lot of cases the guy likes running around. Like I have had one uh, contract I'm working on, the biggest problem I've had is get out into his head the fact that him running from job to job, putting out fires is not what we want to.
Mm.
This is actually counterproductive. What we need to do, I keep telling him, he should be sitting with his feet on the office desk with nothing to do, and everything should be running smoothly, and then we're starting to get somewhere. And in fact, I won't let him grow. I've held him at the size he is until he starts running the business correctly. Because I said if we start to grow, all we'll do is compound the mess he's in at the moment.
Mm.
Now he is struggling with that, but I see he's beginning to get there now. Because his vision of what it was doing, being a good boss to him, was the wrong thing. Is running around fixing the problems. Yeah, and I have a classic one of a guy. on the job, and the boss sitting on the mini digger of a photograph somewhere, 5 guys standing around and chef was looking at the boss proceeds to use the mini digger on the basis that it had arrived from the hire company and he didn't trust anybody else to drive it, right?
Yeah. I've seen that before as well.
So I had to stop. I'd show him the photograph. I let him do it that day. I showed him the photograph and said, okay, who's running this business? Who owns it? And he goes, me. And I want you. And you're the one driving the mini digger and they're all standing watching you. So there.
Yeah. No, you see a lot of that. I know that my speciality within business is systems. And I trained as a quality management, installing ISO 9000 systems into companies, and going in and trying to get people to realize there's accountability, there's responsibility, and you're just not getting the right way of understanding who should be doing what and who's accountable, who's responsible. And yeah, it can be a lot of fun it's not fun for the owner, but it's a lot of fun for you when you're going in there and you're thinking, right, how on earth am I going to get this through to a person?
Yeah, and I said, like I said to you earlier on, I sacked a client yesterday. You have to, from time to time, I give people every chance to do something. But if I fundamentally feel that I can't help somebody, I will tell them I cannot help you because go away, and when your mind's in the right place, come back to me. But because I'm not going to take your money now, because only what's going to happen is in 3 or 4 months' time, I'll be frustrated with you. We'll be getting nowhere, and they'll actually turn and blame me for the problem, right? So I said, we're not getting to that point. My reputation is more important to me than that. So yeah, but it's fundamentally really all about mindset, and it's all about that person. It's growing a business from where somebody has a good idea or is good at one skill set, and how do you replicate that you have 100 people doing the same thing for you and keeping the standard you set off that made you successful at the very beginning. Yeah, and then that, and being able to run the business that you don't need to be there. Really fundamentally, part of my life, I said we sold the business, original business that we had out to a PLC, and the best lesson, I got a number of lessons from them, but the best lesson I got was that I saw the director I ran a company with 150 people firm with multiple plants over North and Southern Ireland. I saw that person 1 hour a month. I sent my accounts in. I had to do 3 days after the month end. My accounts had to be in head office, and it no longer than a 2-page report on how the business is performing. I thought about it after, the guy was really seeing me as a courtesy once a month. He was meeting me on a Friday evening at 3 o'clock once a month in Dublin. And because he knew at that stage I was living in Dublin, I'd be going home. And he said to me, Adrian, please go home after you're working too many hours. But that's, and it was more, I think he was just keeping the human contact. That's the only time I ever saw them. I never saw them other than that. Once a year we sat down, we spent a good bit of time planning the next year's budget out and where we were going to go, and the 3 and the 5 years, and then you go again. This guy was a director of a big company, and he was running multiple businesses like mine. So one director and one PA working with him, very efficient organization. He was running a whole division that involved all the entire oil business of the business, stretching across half of Europe, right?
Yeah, because he set the systems up, he's got the people doing what they need to do, and everything works.
And he gets off and lets you get on with it, right? And I often talk to him about why didn't they centralize more and let it buy all the same trucks. And he said, no, everybody's got their own way of doing things. I want just the results. I don't, what kind of trucks. He didn't want to get into detail, and he was right. So I tried to be honest with my own state. That's what I'm doing with all these little companies running around me now. I try to take the same approach. Really, we sit down, work out what we want, what they want to do, and that makes sense. Let them get on with it. Then I keep an eye on them. I make them do the reporting, and if I see a problem, I come in to help. If I don't, I let them get on with it. Right?
Yeah. So what about your own business? Because as it's growing, you're going to be needing to apply all these skills and grow your own business.
Well, we operate today with I have three people working with me now. We are currently obviously working remotely because of the lockdown situation, but we've good systems ourselves. So we meet by Zoom 3 times a week. We look at the business overall ourselves on the Friday morning. That's our hour and a half Friday morning to look at our own business.
Yeah.
and the other 2 millions are around the clients. So we take all the clients we have and we go through them. And as I'm the one with the wisdom and the older with my son and my daughter are working with me who are in their 30s, I have a rule though: nothing major gets done with the client without me looking it over and agree it. And all important final documents going out to people, I always review them before they go. Till I'm always, just for safety's sake, and it only takes a few minutes. So we keep a very tight grip on what we're doing.
Yeah. Now, you've mentioned oil a few times. So you've obviously been around the oil industry a little bit in various ways. Are you an investor in oil?
No, currently I'm not an investor in oil whatsoever, right? And obviously at the moment we see where oil prices are. At one stage in my oil importing days, oil prices were fundamentally very important to me. So I would have been playing the system as much as I can. So buying shipments of oil, we built up the second really true independent oil company in Ireland. Before that, the major companies all had control of all the oil being imported.
Right.
Basically what happened was that at one stage I would have been watching the oil market like a hawk to know when to buy my shipments, because I could make or lose 100,000 as the oil crossed the Irish Sea at times.
Well, that's the same oil industry. They're buying forward contracts themselves, aren't they? Because
totally, yeah.
they've got to go for the prices, the best prices possible.
Oh yeah, and I would in my time I would have done the same thing. I would have probably I'm going on my memory now. Probably at any stage a third of what I was buying would have been on forward contracts. I would have bought it already just to hedge to do some hedging. And then some I bought spot, and so, which literally is a price on the spot, and some would have been on contract. Yeah.
Now, for me, one of the things is a good business means that I can walk away from the business, right? And I know you and I talked earlier that you took a year off, so you've obviously been able to build a business, make some money, get your time off. Can you get that with your clients?
That they'll get to that position. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I said one of the things I do with them all is to say is like, what are their own hopes and dreams and goals, right? And they're various ones, and they're at various age groups in their lives, right? So I tell them that's part of my job is to try and help them to achieve that dream, whatever they want. And of course, like anybody, if a business has run well, today communications are so good now. You can literally run a business from anywhere. And I mean, I'm old enough to remember when we started off with the first mobile phones in Ireland, and they came in a large suitcase, literally. And in Ireland, we lived in the middle of Ireland. That worked in the middle of Ireland. You had signal in the town, and once you moved on the way to Dublin, you lost the signal completely, and you got it back coming to Dublin. And we used to
Like me
fight.
here in Spain.
We used to fight over who got to have the mobile phone, the company mobile phone, right, which came with the suitcase. So if you compare then to now, where communication is so instantaneous, which it is. Look, you and I are talking. You're in Spain, and I'm sitting in Dublin. Therefore, it does bring phenomenal advantages in terms of how to run a business today. And I think you can run a business from anywhere. I actually, the year we went away, and myself and the boat, I shared traded that year, all that year, made money doing it, off my boat wherever I was in France.
Because you did a year of sailing, didn't you?
Yeah, and motor cruising across Europe. And basically, I wrote a very good blog, which I'm turning into a book, which I finally got around to doing. And I shared traded, and that year I didn't make huge money, but I rented my house. I mean, the year ended up being financially almost free, because between a combination of what I got for renting my house in Dublin, what I made from trading as I went along, covered most of the cost. And then we sold the boat at a nice profit at the end of the trip, because I bought it in Ireland in the middle of a recession, and I sold it in France 2 years later in a much more better market, right?
Mm.
So yeah, so I think so. Yes, and any business, like going back to my boss in the PLCs I work for, he effectively was running my business off an hour a month, and probably 10 or 15 minutes of him looking at a report coming into him once a month. So anybody can run their business the same way today, and
Yep.
yeah.
One of the things I wanted to chat briefly on, in the UK today, it's officially come out that the UK is in recession. Okay.
Yes.
Some pretty drastic figures, and I know we've seen some other countries that have come out and have gone into recession. I'm of the opinion there's a big recession coming. How do you help your clients prepare for that?
Cash.
Yeah, I know. I agree with that. I've been shifting some of my investments as well. But
So I'm not being smart about it. The bottom line in any, to me, in any situation, as we talked earlier on, even if you have a business and it's not doing well for free, if you've got cash resources, or the company has resources, you have the time to make the changes. You know,
yeah,
why do businesses go to business? Because they run out of cash. You know,
yeah,
it's fundamental, right? So I'm a great believer myself that as long as people are sensible. So yeah, who knows? The markets to me at the moment are behaving totally erratically. I don't understand why the stock market
no,
has stayed as high as it has. The only conclusion I can come to is that there's been so much intervention by governments around the world that they've distorted actually the natural workings of the market, right? Now, I'm not nowhere an expert or anything on it, but that's my own view. On that basis, then sooner or later that correction will have to come, right? We've lived through, I've now my lifetime lived through a number of recessions, and the 2007 and 2008 was particularly painful for me.
yeah,
But I've been through the oil crisis '79, and I went through, I've forgotten the rest as '86 and '89. And there are both tremendous opportunities in recessions as well, if you have the cash.
yeah,
So you'll get businesses for half nothing because somebody else didn't keep the cash. And I suppose that's it. So yeah, and I think yeah, fundamentally we will be in recession. We will go into recession. There's no way out of it, right? And therefore cash
yeah.
and
As one of the
opportunity.
things, like I know for me, um, cash is not just physical cash, but you've got bullion, and they're
Sure.
all different types of hedges that people are able to use for recession.
Yeah, I suppose. Well, I suppose anything that you can liquidate pretty fast if you have to. I mean, as you know, with property, it can be very good, but to release a building can take what 6 8 months, sometimes even physically, just to get it to happen.
Yeah.
And people have run out of money in the meantime trying to get having very valuable property. I put it up for sale, even have done a deal to sell it, but running out of money before the cash comes through, and the whole thing coming down on top of them then, right?
And I know certainly, like when you say about the property side, um, I've seen like with a credit crunch. I was talking to a friend yesterday, and he was buying a golf course, and he had all the finance in place. He personally got coronavirus, was ill for 6 weeks, and basically knew nothing. Came to, but in that time, the banks had actually withdrawn all the funding because of everything that was going around. So you have to be, even if you think you've got finance in place to do things, you need to have some kind of backup.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, because obviously, until the money is in your bank account, you haven't got control of it.
Yeah,
You know, so you can have all the promises in the world for wherever they're coming from, but you actually haven't got it. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So it's going to be, look. I said to my own kids, if you describe to somebody that you're living a situation where you need to breathe air to live, but that air in breathing it could give you a disease that could give you a lot of harm, what would people think? And that's what we're actually living through at the
yeah,
moment, right? Yeah, and it's we've in past times that happened, people, governments, like for example, I remember my grandmother talking to me about the flu epidemic that hit Ireland in 1918. So my grandmother died a number of years ago, but she lived well into her 90s. Okay,
Yeah.
so if you think of it, there's 100 years span between me and her at that time now, right? And I remember a time that they didn't understand what had happened. This thing came to, she lived in Slight West of Ireland. The entire town was sick. Her baby son died, and her father died from it. Now it's the same kind of thing we're having today.
Yeah.
We've a lot more knowledge today. She could tell me that everybody got sick, and they called it flu, but because they didn't know what else to do, and they had no treatment for it. Right? People
No.
nursed, and some people recovered. They could figure out why some people recovered and some people died, but that one seemed to affect the old and the young more.
Mm.
Now, where this is the same thing it's today. It was a virus, obviously, and we have the same virus today. We still have no cure, but we understand things better, and communications are much better, and our education system is better, so we have a better understanding of it. But we're still living through the same
Yeah.
pandemic.
And financial markets react differently to it. And just touching on one of the things you mentioned earlier, even the IMF have put out information that they have no idea why the markets are so buoyant at the moment, because it's just going so anti what should be happening in the markets.
Yeah, and personally, I think one of the things, and again, you're far more the expert in this than me, but it seems to me that companies were, when the thing happened originally, with their quarter 1 results were okay because it happened coming into March. So that profitability was there and the world economy had been doing well. So Q1 results came out in Q2, which were quite okay. And people are going, oh, it's not so bad, but they're forgetting that was before the thing. Companies got terribly cautious fast. Everybody withdrew their expectations or what their forecasts were, and or they made very dire ones saying this is going to be terrible. Then when the Q2 results have come out, people have gone, well, we were expecting to lose so much, but we only lost so much. And everybody goes, oh, that's much better than I thought, because they're comparing it. But really, the bottom line, that company has lost a ton of money against the same period last year. But it's always been reported like it's good news. as we expected it to be, right? And everybody's getting lulled into this false sense of security that the bottom line is that companies are not making money, because they can't, because they're shut down. And
Yeah.
if you're not making money, you haven't got a business, right? And you're going to get this. I've said before, you've heard me say, never waste a good crisis. There's a lot of companies restructuring now, things they wanted to do but didn't get a chance to do it, and they're now doing, and we're starting to see huge job loss. Like we had, for example, Debenhams in Ireland shutting down, with a load of jobs gone. They won't be replaced. We've had announcements across the banking system in Ireland. Has Bank of Ireland announced their days is dropping 1,400 people out of its total staff of 8,000. It's a lot,
Yeah.
and that's sort of not kind of 6 or 8 months ago, people were going, oh my god, Bank of Ireland are letting go of 1,400 people. Now it just came through the news, and nobody is. But these are all very good paying jobs, good structure, and they're gone. So yeah, so we're going to get this longer term shift, I think, now, where jobs are going, economies are going to come down, and there'll be winners as well, So, but
Apologies for the noise if you heard that then.
indeed.
That is the bread man is just doing his rounds, so he toots and lets everybody know he's there. So for our listeners, bread's just arrived in our street. So apologies for that noise. Adrian, I don't like to finish on a negative, which is what we've been talking about. So opportunities for people. We are going into tough times, but there are going to be lots of incredible opportunities out there for people who are in business and people who want to be investors. Like you've said, get your cash sorted out and get some cash there to take advantage of it. What other advice would you like to give people?
And watch for the trends. One of the things I personally lost a lot of money on in 2008, because I didn't see it happening. I was a shareholder in a business that was a publishing house. And we had some magazines. We published business magazines particularly, and it was very powerful and doing very well. But there was a trend shift where people were going digital at that stage. what happened with the 2008 recession, it accelerated that movement. So we literally our sales fell by 70%. So overnight, now we have been building a digital wing to the business, but it wasn't near as big at that stage naturally because it couldn't be, because digital was only starting to take off. We saw the trend, but the whole thing accelerated so quick it made it nearly impossible for us to keep up with it. And you had the combination of people cutting a lot of spending and advertising at the same time as switching that trend. The trends are happening again today. Those trends, it's watching out for those trends and being able to follow them. So, working from home, the better, different management of information, particularly those like internet shopping. I mean, there's going to be a whole cutback in I think in stores. Definitely. So they're the things that I can see. So use of information in businesses, how to manage staff much better. People are much more accepting now of being monitored remotely and working remotely, and I think that could be a trend. Yeah, but it's like every time look, this is human nature. My grandmother in her lifetime had saw the invention of the phone, electricity. We all think we're making change. Airplanes. She was 64 years of age before she ever got to the capital of Ireland. She lived all her life in the small town, the west of Ireland, right?
Yeah.
Now, and used to think we think we've seen lots of changes in our lives. What did she have to cope with? An awful lot more, a lot worse, really. So just.
And you've got like we're talking on Zoom. Who would have loved to have had shares in Zoom back in February before the crisis unfolded?
Yeah.
And who would have thought that, so much business would have actually been done through Zoom calls? So the technology does change. And I think, like you said, that's one of the things that you need to keep abreast of. The opportunities are there. You've just got to try and keep on top of them and look for them as they're occurring.
Yeah, and move and shift with them, and not hold on to the past in some ways, just because, be agile. Well, the word is to be agile and be fresh in our thinking, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. So, Adrian, I'm actually going to wind up. I've loved talking to you this morning. If clients want to get hold of you, what is the best way?
Simply to go to our website, which is greenwayfinancialadvisors.ie. They'll get us there. So www.greenwayfinancialadvisors.ie. They'll get all our contact details there, and they'll see what we're about.
For anybody watching the video, the link to the website will actually be in the details underneath. Okay, so Adrian, I really appreciate the time you've given up this morning to chat to me, and good luck with all the businesses. I know you're going to be pretty busy over the coming months with them, and thank you again for being part of this.
Well, delighted to do it, and it was great fun. Thank you.